and gents and friends beyond the binary. I am Tristan, and this is Step Back Tonight. This is a show I do on Tuesday nights, usually at 7, but today I opted for 8 o'clock, just because some stuff went down. And, yeah. This is a show where I say things into a camera for a couple hours. Just, closing some work. Hello, everyone. Let me take a look at the chat here. I see we've got Glitch42 and Double Vito. I know some people who showed up at 7 because apparently saying on Discord and Twitter was not enough to get everyone up to date that I was delaying the stream by an hour. But yeah, I had some dinner plans that I had to push back the show a little bit for. And you know what? I think it'll be better off for it. It's going to be a bit of a shorter show, but, you know, it is what it is. I think that we'll still have a lot of fun. So, what can I say has been going on in Tristan Step Back Land? Well. Oh, there's Kelly in the chat saying that she'll be heading home soon to write down the questions. So, I'll be running the questions by myself for a little bit. That's just how things are. Yeah, so basically, Step Back Land. Let's see. So last time we did a show, how is quitting your job? It is great. I am, right now I have 8 more work days left until I'm done. I finish on Friday the 28th. And I am pretty pumped for the end. Not because I didn't like the job or anything like that. I mean, it had its ups and downs, but I'm excited for the next chapter. I'm excited to take this YouTube thing and turn it into unabashedly my main thing. You see, like, Step Back has always been the thing I want to be my main thing. But I've always had other things on the side. And this will be the first time that I can say, okay, I'm now a YouTuber. What does that mean? How do you make that make your rent? How do you make that work? Some of those questions have yet to be answered. Patreon.com/stepbackhistory. But, there are other ways that this is the first time where I think that we're actually in a stable enough position to get there. I think that the last couple months have been really good for the channel, and I'm really excited to... It feels like there's like just this project that I've been building for almost 4 years that now I'm just like, okay, now's the time. Now I can do it. And it's been always something that has had to play second fiddle to another thing, you know? Step Back had to play second fiddle to my day job. Before that, it was second fiddle to my PhD. And then between those two, it was second fiddle to looking for work. And now, it's just going to be the whole job. Which means that my content's got to get a lot better. I got to be much more professional about it. Yeah. So it finishes on the 28th, and that weekend, the 29th, 30th, and the 1st, is a couple things. It's good old Thought Slime's birthday weekend that weekend, so there'll be like, we'll have some partying down for that. But also it's Canada Day weekend, so it's a long weekend. So July 2nd is my first official day as a full-time YouTuber, and I'm celebrating actually by getting a Step Back tattoo. I was supposed to get it last weekend, but it got moved to the 2nd, so now I'm going to spend my first afternoon as a professional full-time YouTuber on a chair getting a needle dragged across my back for several hours with a sketch drawing in it. It's gonna be great. As for everything else that's going on in Step Back Land, I'm like a little bit obsessed with this whole job ending thing. But besides that, there's other things to think about, which is that I am in mid-production of a video that I'm trying to get out for the end of June. That is going to be my Ancient Aliens video. Hey, Hoar. Welcome to the chat. It's been a while. It has been a while since I've seen you actually in there. But yeah, chat, or what's it called? So I have a video coming out at the end of June. I hope to get out by the end of June. We'll see. I'm waiting on some footage. And then I've got some scripts and some research to do. It's been really busy at work in the last like couple of weeks, so I've been having a hard time getting up, but you know, I'll get there. I'll get there. I can't wait to have it so that I'll be able to do it. I'm sorry, I'm so happy about this whole going full-time thing. I've never been more terrified and more happy about something at the same time. Yeah. Okay. So, that was my mini freak out. Now, maybe I should answer some of your questions. We've got a couple here. Even more professional, is such a thing possible? Well, reclam. My plan is to. I'm going through a transformation of Step Back. My hope is that in the next half of this year, as I transition to full-time YouTubing, that I'm going to restructure the once-a-month Step Back videos, you know, the ones that you know and love. Those are going to turn more into high quality, high production value videos that have a much higher standard of research, are much better written, and have a lot more fun stuff going on today. So this is stuff like my I want to get my videos to be something more like something you'd expect from a philosophy tube video, or an H Bomber Guy video, or a ContraPoints video, or something in that kind of like tier of video quality. My plan is to get to that. I don't have the budget they do. Like the fact that Ollie's now like chartering videos like once a week, like once a month, with like, or chartering like music and stuff like that. That is 400 subscriber money. That is not 50,000 subscriber money. So I gotta work on a shoestring budget until but even so, I'm gonna try new things. I'm gonna try higher quality, good stuff, and we'll see what happens. Where we go. All right, I think you guys are sick of me talking about my own stuff. I see 255's opened up his text file of questions, so I'm starting to get some stuff to talk about. Okay. The first question I got of the night was, how do I define the word liberal? Okay. Sounds like you got a good plan. Yes, I have my plan is that every video is going to be a 3-month project in which I spend a month researching, a month writing, and a month shooting and editing. And then sort of have one of those going on at any given time. So that, like, you know, eventually... Oh boy. Okay, let me just write these down. Okay. So, how did I find the word liberal? Well, when I use the word liberal, so here's the thing. Liberal is one of those words that, like, there's one definition that, like, there's a definition that, like, political scientists use, and then there's a definition that, like, everyone else uses. Okay, like, for example, it's one of those cases where liberal in the United States means, I'm just going to tweet out this stream. Liberal in America means anybody left of, like, the extreme right wing. Because, like, the United States, compared to most other, like, countries, would be considered a very right-wing country. And liberal in a lot of other countries, in most other situations, in most other, like, day-to-day contexts, is sort of a centrist belief. And liberalism, by definition, from my one poli-sci class I took in undergrad, is... Wait, how many poli-sci classes did I take in undergrad? I think I took 2 poli-sci classes in undergrad. All right. That's how you know I'm an expert, because I took an American politics class in undergrad. And then I also completely forgot, but I use it so much in my, like, discussions with you guys that I'm surprised. I also took a Middle Eastern politics class. So I forgot about that. So anyways, liberalism. Liberalism, in, like, the political sciencey definition, is an ideology focused around liberty and liberties. So liberalism is an idea about maximizing what are called positive freedoms and minimizing, like, less emphasis is put on what are called negative freedoms. So we're going to get real poli-sci for a second here. So a positive freedom... Okay, think about the role of the state, right? What does a state do? Do you believe that the state is, by definition, like, is the state the source of freedom, or is the state the antithesis? Does it take away freedom? So does the state act as something that gives you rights? Do your rights come from the Constitution or Magna Carta or whatever else you have? Or, in what's quote-unquote called the state of nature, do you have the ultimate freedom, but in order to live in a society, we agree to take away certain freedoms, and that's the state is? A liberal would argue the latter. A conservative would argue the former. So a liberal is someone who believes that in the absence of state, people have infinite freedom that we then agree to take away. And liberalism, depending upon how extreme you go in liberalism, wants to minimize the amount of freedoms taken away that still result in a functioning society. It's in this way, this is kind of an argument that Noam Chomsky's made, that anarchism is actually the logical extreme of liberalism. Because if you take the ideas about liberty, individualism, and, like, all those things, you end up with what is basically called anarchism. I'm not sure, like, that's a very wonky science, like, poli-sci version of liberalism, but I think that it does define what people mean by liberal, in the sense that it's a idea that they want the state to have as little intervention in things as possible. And then a conservative, on the off chance, would say that if there wasn't a state, people would be horrible monsters that would just tear each other apart. And so you need the state to force people to be good. Usually the conservatives, and this is like in the very, very classical sense of a conservative, want something, a leviathan, as it's called in poli-sci weirdness, to be the thing that we fear and worship, that make us good and make us free. This is things like kings, gods, that kind of stuff. And so most people that exist today would be considered liberals, because most people aren't monarchists anymore. So this is like an 18th century definition of liberal. But like all words, liberalism evolved. And now it really is so what happened was in the 20th century, or 19th and 20th century, you had workers' movements and like socialist movements, and liberalism in the 20th century came to define itself as the absorbing of parts of socialist values, of social progress, of equality, but while at the same time valuing some of the things that are from classical liberalism, like unregulated markets and all that. And so today, a liberal would be somebody who has socialist leaning values when it comes to certain subjects, usually subjects that are it's polite to be socialist in public discourse, like I would argue anti-racism is a socialist current, that anti-sexism is a socialist current, that fighting homophobia, fighting Islamophobia, fighting hate and disunity in all those cases are socialist currents, and they accept those ones. They accept the ones that they like, and that are usually ones that they won't get in trouble for liking. But they still embrace a classical liberal idea of economics, which is one of kind of like a almost social Darwinistic idea of everybody out for themselves. Markets naturally sort the good and the bad and the worthy and the unworthy. And so really, if you want to go on the grand scale, a liberal today would be somebody who takes a handful of left-wing values and attaches it to right-wing values. And so yeah, that would be my position, that liberals are trying to thread some sort of middle between socialism, which is the ultimate in democracy and equality, and capitalism / liberalism, which is basically the ideology of capitalism, which is focused on extreme economic inequality and basically democracy in the thinnest meaning, but basically like nascent anarcho-capitalism or something like that. I know that got really convoluted and weird for a bit, but it's one of those words that that has changed a lot over the years. So I don't like, it's not gonna be an easy answer, because there's a big difference between between like what liberalism means, and this is where I think the what's it called? This is where I think that old stuff, where the term classical liberal comes from, because classical liberal is referring to like just the capitalism, just the unequal hierarchical system of unregulated capitalism, and none of the kind of 20th century socialist currents of that have kind of seeped into kind of liberal thought. That was a hot question. Thank you. I think. Let's. All right. Okay, so that's how it. Tamil Nadu tattoo when. Oh god. Okay. A Tamil Nadu tattoo would be insane. I don't know. I feel like there are some Indian people who might have issue if I got a tattoo of a province in India I've never been to. Plus, I would have to have a lot of subscribers and a much larger streaming audience for me to consider tattooing myself with an inside joke from the streams on my YouTube channel. The Step Back logo actually is in the tattoo I'm getting, but nothing that has to do with the only stream inside joke that's in my tattoo that I'm getting is that it's a tattoo of a Warhammer 40k orc, because we are orc. We are orc. We are a orc wog of anger to take on the fascists, the fascist imperium. All right, let's go to the next question. You object to abusive / toxic religious practices. What'd you say to religious people who say that you're not really tolerant of religion if you're not okay with stuff like circumcision and abstinence education, abstinence only sex ed? That you well, all right. Well, there's the. Okay, so much chat, you guys. Okay, so much easier when Kelly's here to take down these questions. Okay, so to answer that one, I would say that you are free to practice whatever religious practices you want, but kids are not your property. They are their own property. You cannot tell children. You cannot withhold things from children or mutilate them without their their consent. I'm very much for, if you're going to do something to a child for their upbringing, for their bodily autonomy, and they are too young to consent, then you probably should not do those things. When it comes to sex ed specifically, that is just a pure sociological reason, and that is that no matter what kind of religious upbringing you have, in the aggregate, teaching people proper safe sex, which is just information. It's not forcing you to have sex. It's not forcing you to have certain values or anything like that. It's just giving you the facts and making them available to you, that it would result in far fewer unplanned pregnancies, which for a lot of those religious people, I would say, if you're truly pro-life and don't want abortions, you should probably be all for teaching safe sex ed. Other things you could say to that would be that that usually you get an opt-out. The thing for me, for the most part, I think that it's perfectly acceptable to say that if you want to, for religious reasons, to not teach your kids the proper sex education that they probably should, I would argue that they should, then you should not force your religious doctrine on others. It's very much like the way that you're talking about with religious intolerance here. it's very much the Christian argument in America that comes up a lot, where like they make this sort of histrionic argument that they're being oppressed because they're not allowed to tell other people what to do, which I think is a weak argument, to say the least. So that'd be my statement on that. Okay. Where are we next? Okay. Argos Panoptes asks, thoughts on Pokemon Sword and Shield snapping half the Pokedex, making certain Pokemons unobtainable in Galar. Ironically, Halal was inspired by England. I don't know. I haven't played really a Pokemon game seriously since, like... I say I haven't played one seriously since, like...
I made it!
Yay!
Also, everybody look at this bandwagon t-shirt I bought.
Oh my god. They don't care about basketball, Kelly.
They might care. I know you don't care. Don't you dare say no one cares. 2 million people were in our city yesterday. Anyway, talk more about Pokemon now. But look at my t-shirt. Can you see it? Can they see it?
Probably. Yeah, it's a We the North shirt.
Look at that.
What's it called? The Toronto Raptors were good at basketball, I guess.
Hi, everybody. Tristan is so mad at basketball right now. He's been so grumpy about it.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, go back to Pokemon.
Okay, so Pokemon stuff. The last Pokemon game I remember playing was I remember Gold and Silver. I think the last Pokemon game that I ever got in the cartridge and enjoyed, like when it came out, was Crystal, Pokemon Crystal. And then I didn't play it. I didn't play it again. And then, like many years later, I got the Game Boy Advance or 3DS or whatever thing. I got the remake of the original, the Red and Blue, that were remade with the new engine. So I think it was called like, what was it called? Like Leaf Green and Fire Red. I think I played those ones at some point. So I played those two. I got Leaf Green, I think, and I played it for a little bit, and then I didn't really finish it. Yeah. So they're making a new Pokemon game, and I guess not all the Pokemon are getting in it. Is it like something about like how they're getting to... Oh, I should also say that like I also played like the ever-living shit out of Red and Blue. I played a lot of Red and Blue. The OG 151 are basically the Pokemon that I really know, and once you get past that, I get a little confused and scared. But they're making a new one that I guess they're cutting out half the Pokemon. I don't know how. I know that there's like this weird meltdown going on in Pokemon World, but my thoughts are I don't particularly care because I don't have a 3DS and I don't plan on playing Pokemon Sword and Shield. Oh, it's coming out for the Switch, isn't it? Is this the one that's coming out on the Switch? Is this the Switch Pokemon game? Because that one I might buy, but honestly, like... So, like, the idea that people are complaining is that Pokemon now that there's, like, 7 million Pokemon, that you physically cannot collect every single one of them anymore. Is that the thing? Is that what's happening? If that's what's happening, then, like, you'd think they'd be able to make all of the Pokemons happen, but I don't know. I mean, games are only so big, and, can't they all trade with each other? I don't know. it feels like a weird thing to freak out about. It's Pokemon. It's not like, I know some people really like it, but like, didn't Pokemon peak like in like the late 90s? This would be like if somebody was telling me that they were really mad about the latest set of Pogs. I was like, people still do that? Hey, if Pokemon's your thing, then that's fine. It's just, I don't really play console games, so I don't really know anything about what's going on with it anymore. Okay. Let's see what's next. Do you think Iran sank that tanker? No. No, I'm not super into... I don't really think that Iran sank that tanker. It's extremely convenient that... it's extremely convenient that there's, like, this entire YouTube channel... Okay, I'm getting my wires crossed again because I'm trying to copy down questions while answering other questions. It's extremely convenient that while the United States wants to start a war with Iran, all of a sudden Iran does a... it didn't sink the tanker didn't sink. But, like, it's kind of convenient that while the United States is, like, obviously trying to get an attack on, or trying to go to war with Iran, that all of a sudden, with no provocation, Iran attacks an innocent ship with no reason, no warning for why it happened, no statements, no strategic purpose, no tactical purpose. They just did it, and that a lot. It seems like they're trying to get people to expect that they're like mustache twirling villains that want to do a dastardly deed to start a war because they're evil. And that's like, I think that's silly. That's very silly. And unfortunately, they're going to use it just like with the U.S., like just like with the Bay of Tonkin, just like with the USS Maine. They're going to take this completely fabricated bullshit and go to war. Like, I think it's pretty like it's funny how like naked and transparent it is, but it's still like sad that they're going to use it in a conflict that could kill many people, if not all of them, because Iran has a ally in Russia, and Russia has nukes. And so, depending upon whether Russia comes to the aid of their ally, Iran, we could see the world end. I hope that doesn't happen, but you know, it could happen. All right, what's next? Okay. Question. In 1979, supermarket chains in the USSR existed at the same time. Why was the former so much better than the latter at central planning, despite both having the same limited computer tech? Mostly the reason why is because the USSR was not democratic in any way. Like, so I would argue that USSR's central planning in like 1979 was still better than a lot of people gave it credit for. It still functioned. The Soviet Union of 1979 and the Soviet Union of 1949 are very different beasts. Things weren't great, but then again, supermarkets have to manage a chain of supermarkets, while the USSR had to maintain an entire gigantic country with much less infrastructure. So there's that. but at the same time, the sort of hierarchical, like despotic structure of the Soviet Union meant that innovation in logistics would be a possible way for you to upset your boss. So that's not a thing that they wanted to do, because that could get you in some serious shit in the Soviet Union. So there was no incentive really to make things better. I think that there would be like now with like the logistics innovations of like Amazon and like Walmart, that like we could run a planned economy so much better than we run like a what's it called, an unplanned economy, a market economy today. Just trying to see if Kelly's got my Google Doc open yet.
Did you send me a link?
Oh no, I haven't started one. I was waiting on you, but I can make one.
You haven't started a document?
I had it in a text file.
Oh.
But I can make it.
No, I can make it.
No, I got it. Okay. Sorry, everybody in the chat. I just gotta do this thing. Okay. Do you have the chat now?
I do.
All right. The last one I wrote down was the Doug Ford question, so you can move on from there. Okay. So, next question is, what is the worst interaction you've had with an authority figure? Oh boy. I'm gonna have to pass on that one. I feel like the worst interaction I've had with an authority figure still has the potential to ruin my life if I talk about it, so I can't. Sorry. Are you a fan of Cyberpunk? If so, any good book recommendations? Cyberpunk's interesting in of like the moment it's in. I don't think I've like really watched any Cyberpunk stuff that like really watched or read Cyberpunk stuff that like really strikes the heart of like, so like Cyberpunk hits at like the alienation of capitalism, the growing feeling of anonymization and the loss of control over one's own like bodily autonomy. Oh, there's a cat. Bodily autonomy and like the concepts of like that kind of idea meshing with like transhumanism and all sorts of other things. So that and also combined with like sort of 80s fears that the Japanese were going to take over the world. Seriously, watch Blade Runner again and you'll see that there's a lot of anxiety that Japan will take over the world. So Snow Crash seems like one I would like. But the only Cyberpunk things that I think that I've really watched and enjoyed a whole lot of are Blade Runner, Ghost in the Shell, and maybe to an extent Akira. And out of those three, I think I like Akira the most. So maybe that. Maybe. I think that Cyberpunk is very it's got antiquated aspects to it. It's very much a product of the 1980s. And I would love for a Cyberpunk story that sort of updates it for modern times. Like, for example, there was a tabletop role-playing game that I was in a campaign for a few months that was a Cyberpunk game. And the character that I played was sort of an example of looking at a 21st century cyberpunk type story, where she was a like kind of like the secondhand market cybernetics person, kind of like the people who the people who like jailbreak your phone. She was a character that did sort of like back alley cybernetics, and one of the parts of doing that was basically jailbreaking them. And I thought that it was really interesting about like kind of like with the idea of cell phones and other like various things where like different aspects of technology, about how much technology has like technology's like taken over good chunks of your existence. You know, like my cell phone is an extension of my brain. It is an essential part of my life. The internet has become an essential part of our community. I mean, shit, I'm talking to you guys on the internet right now. And how more and more this technology is developing in a way where we have less and less control over said technology. So, like, I don't know if you guys have followed things like how John Deere tractors now have anti-tampering stuff inside of them. So you have to go to John Deere licensed repair officials to repair your own tractor. And farmers can't afford that. So farmers would like fix it themselves. And John Deere would like bring people like that to court. And it's sort of like a John, like, so like it's called right to repair. And there's so many things that you think are yours but are really just licensed to you. And I wanted to in that role-playing game, which was an amazing role-playing game called The Sprawl, which is a Powered by the Apocalypse cyberpunk game that I would play again in an instant. The character I had was a character that was on a crusade to break off these corporate like licensing controls over cybernetics, because now like people's bodies had like licensed stuff in them. And like it's like one thing when like your cell phone is technically licensed by Google to you, but what happens when it's like your arm, you know? What happens when you don't own your arm? What happens when Apple owns your arm? And I thought that kind of stuff was really cool. And that's what I wanted to explore. I do think that we need to sort that cyberpunk is very much a like all the other punk genres, if you think about it, are examples of the anxieties and trends of the moment they were created in. And cyberpunk is very much the 1970s and 1980s in like the anxieties of that period in genre. And that I think today you get closer to the similar type of thing in like the Hunger Games. I think the Hunger Games was a very perfect book for the time that it came out in. The kind of messed up relationship now that we have with media and the sort of extremely detached, like for us now, like in cyberpunk, they didn't imagine that the way that we would feel alienated is that everybody would do most of their social interactions via something like Discord, and that we would all end up having social anxiety disorders because everyone is afraid of face-to-face interactions, and now they're too much work, and now we like dehumanize other people and allow for like the rise of hate and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, this makes me want to read Neuromancer at some point. Okay. Next question is, why was your Mormonism video so generous and non-critical? From what I've heard about how awful the church can be, i.e. from ex-Mormons, I can't help but feel they don't deserve that. Well, that's because I wanted to do an educational video about what the Mormons were. And I thought that if you look up Mormons, or what are Mormons, on YouTube, you find almost exclusively anti-Mormon stuff. Like, it is actually very hard to find an explanation of what Mormonism is that isn't explicitly made with either the purpose of selling the Mormon church or, way more common, disparaging the Mormon church. And usually on the grounds of, haha, isn't this so silly because they believe in weird things. Which, like, you know, every religion does, and I thought that was weird. The other thing is that... Mormonism, or what happened was after I made a video on... I think it might have been, like, one of my religion videos came out anyways. And I got a email from a anarcho-communist Mormon who agreed to talk with me, agreed to do a Skype interview where he would hold back no punches about the Mormon church and the issues within it, that he would calmly and matter-of-factly explain what his beliefs were, and what I found when I looked past a lot of the rhetoric that was designed to take them down is that, yes, they can be a very socially conservative religion. That is true. They have dubious roots. That is true. But they are also a religion that is, like, that puts so much emphasis on, like, radical friendliness and, like, they are, like, oh, Dalton Jones, thank you very much for the $1 super chat. Much appreciated. That they were, like, a religion that, in the sort of or not geopolitics, but, like, in the socio-political landscape of America, have actually stood up for the, against the, religious intolerance of others. Like, for example, very soon after 9/11, Mormons were some of the biggest anti-Islamophobia people. And so it was through all those factors. The fact that I wanted to make an educational Mormon video. The fact that somebody had reached out to me to make a video about Mormonism that was fair and honest. And also as a sort of reaction to the way that people had been shitting on Mormons on the internet, I thought I would make at least one video out there that wasn't taking the piss out of the Mormons. I wanted to explain what Mormonism was in a way that wasn't taking the piss out of them. That was, like, my challenge for the video. And I'm actually quite proud of that. Because, like how every other religion has issues, the Church of Latter-day Saints definitely has issues. But they can be... you can be a good person and be a Mormon. If anything, it's a lot. It's like every other religion. You can find the things that make it very easy to do so. With it, Mormonism having a high value on, like, being a tight-knit family and being kind to each other. They just got to get over, like, the homophobia and, like, the sort of insular nature. And the thing is, compared to, like, a lot of other religions, the Mormons have shown themselves to be extremely open to change. Like, when the Mormons were threatened to not let Utah become a state because they practiced polygyny, they banned polygyny. when they were given shit for being racist and they weren't like doing well in missions across the world, they decided that they were no longer racist, or they didn't, they got rid of their racism and their stuff. And I think that that's a sign that it's a religion that can evolve. They should do some more evolving. I believe I mentioned that in the video, but you know, take what it is. I think I actually feel yeah. Your question is like, why were you so generous to Muslims when, like, why don't you listen to like what's her name, something Hirsi Ali, the woman who's married to freaking Niall Ferguson, who like basically spouts like some of the most horrible vitriol about Islam because she's like a former Muslim with like some dubious histories of like, it's like, if anything, asking the especially people who define themselves as religion on the internet, they're like the last people you should be asking about a religion, because they might have an axe to grind, you know? Because they definitely did not have a good experience. All right, where are we next? How do you define a leftist? I know people think of themselves as leftist and say things like, or we could live under socialism and starve, or there will always be hierarchies. Okay. So a leftist comes from a term from like the Cold War. And basically is just a reference to the fact that it was a umbrella term for different types of left-wing movements at the same time. Like, they would say things like this country is under threat by leftist rebels. And what that would mean is, like, there would be these groups of rebels, and some of them would be, like, communists, some of them would be Maoists, some of them would be Stalinists, and, like, different types of left-wing groups would band together, or social democrats and things like that would all come together to do something, and sort of taking them together in a way that that does something. Taking the it's an umbrella term for anybody who is part of a left-wing current. So that would be the way I would say it. I don't understand anybody who would call themselves a leftist and therefore an anti-capitalist, and say things like that socialism would cause starvation and that there will always be hierarchies. I mean, there will always be hierarchies does sound like something that like a Stalinist would say, and that's technically a left-wing current, so I guess there's that. Don't know of anybody who'd call themselves a leftist who would be anti-socialist, though. That'd be weird. All right. Suppose North Korea nuked American Samoa. Would you still be against the U.S. going to war with them? Yes. If anything, the fact that North Korea would be a nuclear armed state at that point is even more of a sign that you should definitely see what the fuck went on. The thing about that is, like, there's like, in that situation where American Samoa is getting nuked by North Korea, there's a whole lot of context missing that you can't really answer the question without. Like, it's kind of like this like attack on a tanker in the Strait of Hormuz type situation. Like, why would Iran attack this tanker? What is the motivation? Why are you making this argument? Like, what? Like, without evidence, or like without like a reason, which I don't see one that North Korea would do. So in order to have North Korea actually fire a nuclear missile at American Samoa would imply that things have changed in the world context that make speculating on whether or not I would support such a war completely negated. Because you would need to either have a North Korea that thinks that it can start a war with the United States and win, in which case, I don't know what's going on with North Korea there, or you have a higher chance that it was something set up by the United States in order to provoke a war with North Korea, like something with Iran. Like, if I woke up and saw on, like, CNN or something that, like, North Korea nuked American Samoa, America goes to war, I would be very skeptical, because knowing the political, strategic situation that North Korea is in, it would make no sense for them to do that. It would be a complete, like... And if they did do that, then my mentality is that it would more than likely have been an accident. Because people don't just fire these weapons for no reason. And so it might have been some sort of technical error, which, if you read, like, Command and Control by Eric Schlosser, you'll know that, like, has come close to happening many times. That's my, what was her name again? Girl from Bob's Burgers. Okay. The next question I have here is, let's say, the next question I have here is, what is your favorite thing about Bernie? What are things you don't like? Okay. Maybe to go back a little bit on the North Korea question, because there's some people talking about North Korea in the chat. Yeah, there is a whole thing that, like, North Korea is a Chinese ally. China has shit tons of nuclear weapons, and also North Korea borders Russia, which also has shit tons of nuclear weapons, and that the United States, which has talked about the possibility of having first strike rights with nuclear weapons, being able to retaliate with nuclear weapons, could set up a chain reaction that would set off the destruction of the world, which would be, you know. Okay. Let's answer this question about Bernie. What's my favorite thing about Bernie? He has normalized the term socialism. I think that if Bernie became president and nothing else happened, the fact that he normalized the word socialism in a way that more millennials now in America prefer socialism to capitalism, which in my mind is an amazing beginning to us pushing people further to the left in a way that has not been possible for decades, is really good. That's probably the best contribution Bernie's had. That and universal healthcare. I think universal healthcare is, like, the one thing that, like, if you implement it in America, America would get, like, tangibly better almost overnight. I don't know where Kelly went. All right. What are some things you don't like about Bernie? I think Bernie's foreign policy platform needs a lot of work. Needs to be a lot less interventionist. I feel like he should embrace more pacifist ideas. He's still stuck in the mentality that, like, America should be, like, a leader of the world. I think that That's something he should address. I think that the programs that he wants to push for, you know, making the parts of the economy more socialist could go further. Maybe it's a politics thing, which makes sense. I'd rather he got healthcare taken care of before anything else. But I would love if he moved into socializing housing or public transit or any of the other things that would be perfect public works projects. And then, on my secret wish list, if he just one day nationalized Amazon, and all of a sudden all of a sudden all you need to do is nationalize Amazon, and a huge chunk of the American economy is now socialist. So there you go. Okay, Tuesday's creation. Do you think the Democratic Party will snub Bernie for the more moderate Joe Biden, or do you think they'll take advantage of Bernie's popularity from 2016? This depends upon the situation in the primaries. I do think that at the moment, so the way that the Democratic primary system is working this time is this. So the way that primaries work is that when you do the primaries and caucuses across the states, what you're choosing are a group of people who are called pledge delegates. So you are voting for what your state's pledge delegates are obliged to vote in the first round of voting at the Democratic National Convention. The way that the rules have been changed now, the U.S. or the superdelegates can no longer weigh in until after the first round of voting. So, will the Democratic Party snub Bernie for the more moderate Joe Biden? They definitely, I think a lot of the Democrats are definitely hoping that Joe Biden's current support, which seems to be dwindling a little bit, will hold out for the primary process. That's definitely their hope. But if Bernie takes Iowa, which he came very close to last time, I think he's not doing so great right now, but I think that the debates will change things quite a bit. I think that the numbers the support numbers we're going with now are they don't represent how things are actually going to be, because when the debates start and when the actual primaries and caucuses start going on, and when a lot of these smaller people start dropping out because their numbers aren't picking up, so their donors start drying up, that will change the metrics quite a bit. For example, I think Bernie's numbers will go up quite a bit when Elizabeth Warren drops out, or if she drops out, I should say. And so what you might have is a replay of what happened with Donald Trump and the Republican primaries, where if Sanders won the first few primaries and then the party tries to just line up anyone that they can get to oppose Sanders, but eventually there's a turning point because it becomes overwhelmingly obvious that this is the one that the people want. Then I think that a lot of Democrats might just turn on that, and they might actually be okay, we'll support Sanders in this, and then get more antagonistic after the election's over. I don't think that Democrats are so hardcore about preserving their chances of winning the White House that if Sanders was the candidate, they would pretty much say and do whatever they wanted to get Sanders to win. And then, of course, attack him as soon as he's elected, hoping that they can because people will be jockeying if Sanders becomes the Democratic nominee, people will be jockeying to get in his cabinet, They'll be showing off about how progressive they are. People will write think pieces about how politics has completely changed. Again. The thing that might happen, though, that I could see a snub coming from, is if it's close. If it's more than a 2-person race, and in the first round of voting at the Democratic National Convention, nobody takes the majority, and they go to a second round, and then the superdelegates can weigh in, and then the pledged delegates can vote however they wanted, then I could see people going into a smoke-filled room for a couple hours and coming out and saying Joe Biden's a candidate. That would get a lot of people mad, but I think it would really come down to who has a lot of support at that point and all these kinds of things. I have no idea. I honestly, like, speculating on some of this stuff is really hard because, like, the Democratic National Convention is going to be in, like, about a year from now, and a whole lot is going to happen between now and then. Someone said Biden should just be a Republican. The Republicans aren't as forgiving as Democrats when it comes to these things. The Republicans are much more ideologues who do not respect people who lose. Like, Biden has run for president like 5 times and lost. And Republicans would never allow that to happen. They wouldn't like him. He's a loser. Democrats love losers. That's why they always lose elections. All right, where are we? Would American Republicans be considered conservatives or liberals? Well, by the definition I gave, they would be considered hyper-liberals. They are classical conservatives. Like your average Republican, like your, I don't know, what's his name? Marco Rubio would probably be considered a classical conservative or like a conservative. Which in the old term would be a liberal, because I don't think that Marco Rubio wants like America to have a king, for example. Or classical liberal, that's the term. Sorry. But I think that your on the ground Republican, your average Republican, is much more of a conservative. They more want like a dictator to attack the people they don't like and destroy the enemy. Like, look how popular Trump is. Your average Republican like voter is somebody who wants a dictator. They want a daddy to tell them what to do because they're afraid of other people having freedom. Okay. I can stop illegal immigration. Arrest CEOs that companies that hire them. Good counter to Trump. Good politics. Bad optics. I think that writes off the people who are in America. I think that pits us as the enemy of people who are illegal migrants. And I think the people who are illegal migrants are on our side. We shouldn't throw them under the bus like that. Thoughts on Vaush? I haven't seen any of his content except for that really shitty Twitter thread he did. That's it. He's like, he did like a transphobic Twitter thread, and he did like a sorry, not sorry apology afterwards. That still sucked. So I think Vaush sucks. Okay. Suppose you're going to be reincarnated in Europe in 97 BC. Would you want to be born inside or outside the Roman Empire? Well, trying to think about the rest of the world at that time. 97 BC, maybe you'd want to be in China. I feel like China would be a slightly better place to be than, like, Rome. But especially because, like, in the Roman Empire, then you would need to, you'd have to choose, would you be... Also, was Rome an empire in 97 BC? I don't know. I don't know my European history. So I think that, like, if I was, like, a Roman, like, wealthy patrician and not a slave, then sure, being a Roman citizen who... Being a Roman citizen who has all the benefits of citizenry would probably be pretty nice. If I was like a slave, then if I was reincarnated in Europe in 97 BC, all right. Well, then I guess Roman Empire would probably be better. Closer to Rome would be the best. I would imagine that Rome would probably be a place where you would see big differences between different parts of it about what parts would be good. But if you got to be, like, on the Italian peninsula and doing really well, that'd probably be a better place to be. I don't know. That's like 2,100 years ago. I don't really... That's a long time. Are you part of deterministic gang or free willer? Definitely. In my mind, it's, to me, I'm a little bit of an irrelevantalist on this, where I would say that, I definitely don't believe in free will, but also that the mechanisms that make us do the things that we do are so complex that they're not really predictable at the moment, and probably won't be for a long time. And in my mind, it's one of those things where it's like, we probably don't have free will, but honestly, it's not, we shouldn't really think about it. It's better if we just don't think about it. Okay. Did you hear about the Trans Mountain Pipeline being approved? I did not know that it had happened. I know that, like, there's a big pipeline project to build an oil pipeline through indigenous territory in the Rockies. I did not. I thought that, like, Canada, like, the federal government bought the pipeline because Justin Trudeau, who loves the environment so much, still, like, paid shit tons of federal money to buy the pipeline so that he could keep doing it. And Mr. like, I want to renegotiate a relationship with the indigenous people of these on a nation-to-nation level is completely irregarding the Wet'suwet'en people who protested this pipeline. But last I heard about it was when there was, in, like, January, February, or whatever, the Wet'suwet'en crisis, where the Wet'suwet'en people were protesting the pipeline, but then they got to some sort of, they brokered some sort of peace, and I don't know where things went from there. If it got pushed through, then I'd be very sad. You seem overworked. Have you considered joining a union? Ha 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 ha. I would love it. It'd be great to join a union, but I have, at the moment, 3 jobs, going down to 2. So it depends, and also it's like working for myself. So I guess now I'm part of the petite bourgeoisie, which, I mean, how does that factor in? How do you become a union of that? I like the idea of making a YouTuber union. That'd be fun. I think that would be good. Dictate to YouTube what we should do. When did this joke become a thing? I think you're talking about the what was that thing called? The Tamil Nadu meme. There was this guy, and he's still around, and he comments on every single Step Back video, like this every single like he'll do like his regular comment at the end of every single Step Back video, and then finish it with "Do Tamil Nadu," and then while I was doing a stream, he came into the chat. And I asked him about this. I asked him, like, why do you keep asking me to do Tamil Nadu after every single video? And I was like, this is like, I've been trying to figure it out. It's been driving me nuts. And I like went like all bananas. And then he just said, I don't know. I just put at the end of the comment just because I thought it'd be like, I just do it just in case just because I don't have anything else to say. And it eventually like morphed into a meme because the stream when that happened was very closely similar to the time when the Step Back Discord got started, and the Step Back Discord, like the stream turned into a meme, and Howar made a whole bunch of really funny Tamil Nadu memes, and it just kind of turned into a thing. And now every once in a while, I get Tamil Nadu flare-ups. Oh, that's the next question, too. What is the context behind the Tamil Nadu meme? My favorite one is... I think Howar made it, and I can't find it. I lost it. I've been looking for it. Is one where it's a Discord message from Tamil Nadu, and it just says, "Do me." And it's, like, all, like, deep-fried and stuff. Man, it's, like... It was like also during like peak deep fried memes, like that period of like meme history. So a lot of weird shit came out of it. It was great. What if the next administration came up with pretextual reasons to have Trump's SCOTUS picks arrested, pressured the Justice Department to do it so they can be removed from the court? That feels like messing with a previous Supreme Court pick. I mean, like, if they actually committed a crime, maybe. But, like, actively fucking with a Supreme Court justice would be considered an extreme break with norms. I think that you'd be way better off. What's so funny? Oh man, moth memes. Yeah, I think that Tamil Nadu happened around the time of the moth memes. I love like moth. Yeah, lamp. That was a good meme. I missed that one. Give lamp. Yeah, I think the packing the court option would definitely be a better way of changing the Supreme Court. But yeah, I think that trying to like get I could see getting Brett Kavanaugh arrested for something that he did in his past. That could be a thing. Although I think the statute of limitations is up on all of the crimes that he committed. But like if they started trying to like fuck with like Neil Gorsuch and stuff like that, like I feel like that would be seen as very much messing with American democracy, and that's not a thing. All right, next up is, do you think we can separate art from the artist? I ask this because some fascists write pretty good novels. Would you not read good novels if the author was horrible? I mean, no, Argos. I really liked Ender's Game, for example, and the author of Ender's Game is a fucking horrible human being. No. Okay, so there's two answers to this. You can separate the art from the artist, and you can enjoy those things knowing that the author is bad, is like a shitty person. And in my mind, oftentimes when you do that, you have, like, for example, like H.P. Lovecraft was a terrible person. And I'm finding that the more that I read H.P. Lovecraft, the more I'm noticing the shittiness of him in the work, and I enjoy it less and less every time I look at it. And I feel like that might happen if I read Ender's Game too many times. But what I would say is there's another answer, which is it's not good to financially support those people. So it's okay to like a movie or a song or a book by a terrible person because, death of the author and everything like that, but definitely don't pay them for it. Like, yeah. All right. Why am I mad at basketball? They don't do any harm. Let the people celebrate. I was just annoyed. So the context behind this is that Toronto recently won the NBA Finals. And I was not prepared for how annoying that would have been. Like, I was fine with people enjoying basketball. Like, whatever. You have fun with whatever you think. I'm not one of those people who thinks that people who like sports are wrong. What I am is one of those people who doesn't care about sports personally. And I was getting more and more frustrated with a couple things, which was one, basketball just getting shoved in my face everywhere all the time. It was just something that was like really getting on my nerves. To the point where by the time we got to the finals, it was like boiling over and I was just getting like extremely angry and frustrated that like I just could not get away from basketball. I think the most annoyed I ever got was when I was trying to go to bed and a game was happening and I could hear like Kelly was watching the game and then she decided to leave and go to a bar to watch the rest of it so that I could sleep. And I was like, okay, I can relax. I'm going to be able to sleep now. And then I hear people above me yelling at the basketball game. And also there's like a sports bar, like maybe like 100 or 200 meters from my apartment building. I could hear people yelling in that. And then also after the game was over, there's just the endless like cars honking, people just going, let's go Raptors. And it just didn't fucking stop for like 3 weeks. And I just got so just, and it peaked yesterday because they had their victory parade. And so that's why I was mad at basketball. I just was tired of it just forcing itself into my life. Without, yeah, that's about it. And Kelly decided that she likes basketball now. To the point where she bought a t-shirt. Luckily now, with the parade behind us, I'm hoping that basketball is now done. We're probably not going to win because Toronto's sports teams typically suck. So I don't imagine that we're going to like do a thing for a long time until like, I don't know, like in 2027 when the Blue Jays win the World Series and then Kelly is now a big fan of baseball and all that happens. Did you see the video of Raptors fans booing Doug Ford? No, I heard about it, but that's great. What's the next question? Why don't you like the YouTube channel Re-Education again? Aaron seems like a cool dude. Well, Laura was here. The answer to that is, I only ever watched 2 videos of his, and neither of them were very good takes. One was a reaction to the Steven Crowder situation, in which he basically made the argument that Thought Slime made a response to on Friday that pretty much wrapped up how I felt as well. And then the other one was like when he was talking about rape culture, and he basically argued that like only rich people are in rape culture, and that he like said like, look at like the Me Too movement and Pizzagate, and I was like, okay, so he's a Pizzagate guy, and so like, it's like, that's a sign that he's prone to conspiracy theories. It's obvious he has no like gendered analysis of these things. Kind of sounds very much like a class reductionist approach to these issues, and just like I was just like, I was just not enjoying it. I don't like his takes. Okay. Okay, let's see. Fan of the Final Fantasy games? If yes, which ones are your favorites? I like some Final Fantasy games. So, bit of a background. I have never really had, I've never really had a console. Like, I had a PC when I was a little kid. I have a PC now. So there was only a brief time. There's a brief time in the late 90s, early 2000s when I had a PlayStation and a PlayStation 2. So I played exactly 3 Final Fantasy games, and didn't finish any of them, but I enjoyed them. So the Final Fantasy games I played that were like when I was like in 8th, 9th grade-ish was Final Fantasy VII, which I think would probably be my favorite, which is like the most like cliche thing to say, that Final Fantasy VII is your favorite Final Fantasy game. Then the second one would be Final Fantasy VIII, the one with Squall and stuff, which I liked, but I know a lot of people didn't. Probably Final Fantasy. Actually, I might say that Final Fantasy VIII I liked more than Final Fantasy VII. And then I played Final Fantasy IX as well. And Final Fantasy IX was okay. I didn't really get into it as much as the other two. And then by the time, like, I didn't play Final Fantasy X, and I basically haven't played any Final Fantasy ever since. And I didn't play any Final Fantasy before. So those are the ones I played. And out of those 3, I think I liked 8 slightly more than 7. I think I liked the combat of 8 a little bit more than 7. I like the story of 7 more than 8, though. Did I see that somebody said that they just came out to their dad and are like having a bit of a freak out and are just are watching this channel to calm down? Is that a thing I read?
Yep, that's happening.
Oh man, that really sucks. I will try to be really entertaining to help you, because that hopefully things work out. That's my hope. Solidarity. That must have been real tough. I appreciate the bravery it took to do that, and I hope it works out. Okay. I'm going to try to answer some really entertaining questions about real bright and happy subjects, such as what's after the Final Fantasy games. Have you ever studied religious history / theology? Not really, no. Stonewall lesson on the fly. I made a Stonewall video. You can watch that. It's pretty good. I'm surprised that Japan isn't up in arms, presumably some U.S. operative bombing their ship. Surely there must be some back channel heat with them over that. Maybe. I have no idea. I have no idea how everything's going on right now, because Trump doesn't live in normal world. Okay. Let's see. Can you talk about Doug Ford? Curious about your take. Doug Ford's bad. He was... that's the obvious take. I think I tweeted, fuck Doug Ford today. Doug Ford is... he's taught me a lot of lessons about politics. First of all, before Doug Ford's election, maybe a little bit before Doug Ford's election, when I saw Francois Legault, or whatever the hell his name is, in Quebec get elected, I was like, oh, that's terrifying. We were a little worried that, like... Because, like, the last federal election, right, happened before Trump and the whole, like, radical right thing. And I always thought that we weren't immune to that in Canada, but I did not know it would happen so soon. And so when the 2018 election was really heating up, was starting anyway, it looked like it was going to be a pretty normal election until Pat Brown got Me Too'd. And then all of a sudden, Doug Ford was leader of the party and saying all this ridiculous shit, and then all of a sudden he was premier. Showed a lot of things. One, that elections matter, because at that point, when Pat Brown went down, I was pretty sure that, like, the Conservatives were done for. But it shows that, like, the time when the writ gets dropped means a lot. The ground game of a political party can shift elections quite a bit. And so 2018 ended up being a really weird election for Ontario. Since becoming premier, he has shown himself to be exactly what Doug Ford said on the tin. He's a blatantly corrupt politician who is putting through an entire conservative agenda that is basically doing what every conservative in Ontario history has done, which is the political equivalent of stripping the copper wiring from the walls. Cutting everything, stealing things, destroying infrastructure, fucking with, like, every single public system, and just causing a huge mess that will lead to strikes and economic depression and all sorts of terrible things that will just keep redoing itself until we vote for somebody else in 2022, because we live in a weird world where we decide that democracy only happens once every 4 years. And so when someone else is premier, they're going to have to spend almost an entire decade just rebuilding all of the freaking damage that Doug Ford has done. In my work life, which I don't talk about that much, but in my work life, I've seen us have to fight Doug Ford on a million fronts as he tried to erase LGBTQ plus people from the sex ed curriculum, as he tried to, under threat of fines, force gas stations to basically put stickers on their pumps showing like conservative talking points in front of the federal election. We've seen this fiscal conservative waste tons of money making, like, personalized campers for himself. Like, there's, like, not been a sign that there's not been in a long time a more corrupt premier of Ontario. And I really hope that if we learn anything from this, it's like that the Liberal Party, I hope, will just die. They're going to try to find the oldest, whitest man that they can possibly find to lead the party next. And I hope that they just let Andrea Horwath be premier next. That'd be great. Okay. What is the quote about Soviet planning? I'm not sure what you mean by a quote. Sorry. Thoughts on depressing, uplifting news. A child working a day job to go to school has 30,000 upvotes on Reddit. Oh yeah, that's messed up. Yeah, there's this whole thing where, like, there's this situation where places like the subreddit Uplifting News will, like, show these stories that basically exemplify that we live in, like, a dystopia, but show them as like heartwarming human interest stories. Like the most recent one I think was the kid who saved up his pennies in his piggy bank to pay off the lunch debts of kids in his school, which I thought was like, but then like Bernie Sanders quote tweeted that and went like, this is super messed up. You should not have kids paying off lunch debt to their kids. Cause like, I don't know the situation entirely with lunches in America, but, like if I remember correctly, there's like, what's it called? So like they have to provide a free lunch. It's a federal program, but they also charge people for lunch, but they can't like not give them their lunch even if they're in debt. So they have to like make these like really weird public humiliation rituals to force people to pay their lunch. I'm not exactly sure how this works. I don't know the story behind that because we don't have a program like that in Canada. So, but yeah. Do I have thoughts on this? I think it's super depressing that we think that like these dystopian situations and people going through hardship is somehow heartwarming and uplifting. It's gross. Why would logistics innovations upset bosses, or were the bosses just that petty? In the Soviet Union wingless monkey, they were. Yeah. Doughboy DeVito, how historically accurate is the stereotype of house slaves being brainwashed bootlickers? I've never heard of that stereotype before, but I don't imagine it's true. So in some ways, house slaves were in a situation where they were closer with their owners, which resulted in both them getting better treatment, but also made them more susceptible to their abuse. And so you can really go either way. Can you elaborate on why people thought Japan was going to take over the world? In the 80s, just Japan was having this huge economic growth. That was around the time when anime was starting to come to America and like different Japanese cultural exports were starting to become big. That's when like Japanese cars started becoming pretty common and like Japanese electronics and stuff like that. And so Americans were getting really anxious that all of a sudden there was just all this Japanese stuff showing up, and they freaked out about it. And there was a minor cultural panic about this like in the 80s and the 90s. And we've kind of completely forgotten about that, but that was a thing that was going on. Have you heard about solar punk? If so, any opinions? I have heard of solar punk. I don't know anything about it, but I have heard the term. I think it's like science fiction trying to imagine kind of post-climate change sort of future where we didn't destroy the world. If so, I like that. Thoughts on selling your house near the coast if climate change happened? I have just one question, Arcos. Sell the house to who? Fucking Aquaman? Alright. Did Trump just announce Kristallnacht on Twitter? What? Can I get a clarification on that? Because I've been streaming, so I don't know. Oh my, I've got 20 minutes left and I've got an entire page of questions, so I gotta get more, I gotta get my move on. Okay, when will you turn Canada into the international caliphate? That's my plan after I destroy all the gamers. Do you find the guillotine meme to be a bit uncomfortable? Maybe a little bit, but not that much. And I feel like the guillotine meme is doing more good than harm at the moment. Are cops troops or comrades? Are cops or troops comrades? Can they be reformed? What separates cops from troops as far as forgiving what they do or calling them bastards? Do I think that cops or troops are comrades? Not while active, but I do think that they are still humans. They are humans who are upholding the unjust hierarchy in the most direct and violent way possible. So I would say if they realized the darkness of their ways and left their service and moved into things like, for example, like there's a podcast called Eyes Left, which is a left-wing podcast run by former troops. There are definitely veterans who are no longer soldiers, who are definitely people that can become comrades. I imagine that there are probably some former cops who left the service because of the things that they were told to do. And there was a study that came out, like, what was it? A study that came out over the weekend that showed that there's like a huge amount of police officers who are associated with like racist Facebook groups. So hopefully, I hope that the handful of good apples in the police force leave at some point, because I feel like good people don't succeed and last long there. Because like one of my friends from undergrad is like one of the first trans cops in Edmonton, and my hope is that someday she like gets out and realizes that she's not on the right side of history here. But like, I don't think that they're irredeemable. I just think that they're irredeemable while they have those jobs. And that you could definitely see some. I'm definitely for, radical forgiveness and rehabilitating cops and troops and turning them into good people. They just can't do that while also being cops and troops. Why would killing more people help? I don't know what that's a response to. The self-called leftist I was referring to is pretty much American liberals who think they're leftists because they are pro-social issues. What do you think of those people? I think that they're people who are a little misguided about what the left-right spectrum are because of the sort of issue in American politics. American politics is so right-wing that people who are center to center-right are now considered leftists. Where are we? Do you think that cops don't have enough workers' rights? They get overworked and don't have proper access to physiotherapy. I mean, sure, that's like the least of my concern about cops. The fact that they, basically are in charge of crushing political dissent against and for like oppressing racial minorities and the lower classes, like that's like their job. That's more of an issue to worry about with the cops. You've mentioned a lot recently that you dislike capitalism. I'm not an economist, but it seems like the only alternative is a full command economy. What would be your ideal economic system? Ian Moore, my ideal economic system, I think Ian Moore went to bed, but I'll answer the question. My ideal economic system would be a planned economy. I'm reading this book called The People's Republic of Walmart right now that shows that the most successful companies in this capitalist system are the ones that on the inside act like very highly efficient, well-run, planned economies. Like the successful companies like Walmart and Amazon have done amazing work in logistics that have made this like well-oiled machine of planned economics. And it's shown because the way that sort of economies, the way that the market works, is that everything drifts towards monopolies anyway. That really the most efficient and successful economic systems are the ones that are planned and organized, especially with our modern technology. And in my mind, with the ingenuity that makes an Amazon or a Walmart work, but with incentives that are not money. Like the thing is, like Amazon and Walmart are designed to maximize profits. But what if we had the technology that makes those things run, but it was designed to maximize environmental sustainability, human like welfare, worker welfare, and making sure that everybody got the things they needed. There's that could very easily be an economy that does very well for people, because we no longer live in we don't live in a economy of scarcity anymore. Pretty much everybody, like, we produce 40% more things than the human race needs, so we are like swimming in excess stuff. And if we moved away from profit being the motive we had for running our economy and moved towards like social good, ecological good, sustainability, durability, things would be a lot better. Like that's just my thought. So I would say that the economic system I would prefer would be a fully planned economy, made up of cooperating individual groups, small economies and things like that, but still highly integrated, planned out, and everything like that. And if you want to learn more about that, I would recommend reading a book called The People's Republic of Walmart, because I'm enjoying it a lot. Okay. Because the choices are not to go to like the old Soviet command economy anymore. You know, the Soviets, their economy worked better than people give them credit for, but it was still a mess, and that had to do with totalitarianism and primitive technology. We are not like that anymore. Why is Canada more like a federation of different countries, i.e. provinces, than America with its states? I wasn't here if you answered it. No. Okay, so Canada is a confederacy. The reason why is because Canada was founded as a multinational country from the start. The first two provinces in the country were Ontario and Quebec, which were two provinces with extremely different ethno-linguistic heritages. Then you've got Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and PEI. So I don't exactly know why they chose not to go down the America route. There was no revolution. It was very much like we became something called a Dominion. We became a Dominion, which is kind of like what happened when Australia got its independence, where Britain decided to give us relative autonomy. But the way that they did it is they just said, okay, all of these provinces that we call the Canadian provinces, they're going to be confederated in something called Canada. And that was it. That was the idea behind it. And the federal government was, from that point on, still really weak. What if the mercury from Kim's hat got to his brain? Something makes me think that if Kim Jong-un ever got to a point where he was going to fire a nuclear missile at the United States, that his generals would come in and tell him very kindly that he is no longer running North Korea. I'm very convinced that North Korea is not as much of like a one-person dictatorship as you think they are. They do have, weirdly enough, elected governments, and they vote on like bills and stuff. But on top of that, I think that North Korea is actually, I think that the eternal leader or whatever is a powerful position and definitely someone who has a lot of sway. But I do think that the military brass of North Korea have a lot more sway than the media portrays North Korea as having. And in my mind, yeah, I do think that the Kim dynasty, ever since Kim Jong-il, really are like 3 major missteps away from a military coup. And I think that if there is ever going to be a time when North Korea ends as a country and we go to like Korean reunification, that that it'll happen when there's a military junta that takes over North Korea and makes overages to Seoul. That's like the most likely a time that that I would see Korea coming back together. Where are we? Muslims are extremely disadvantaged, whereas Mormons are strongly aligned with the American conservative establishment. Doesn't that make it different? To an extent. I mean, I think that you are overestimating how well off Mormons are in American conservatism. I feel like, especially in the current moment with Trump and stuff, that Mormons actually feel very alienated from American conservatives. Mormons are, as a group, they were like, unlike the other evangelicals, the Mormons actually didn't they didn't step behind Trump. I don't know if you know, but like Utah had a third party candidate who I don't think he won the state, but he came very close. Trump is not liked in Utah. And I don't know if you know, but like the biggest anti-Trump Republican is like Mitt Romney, the Mormon who ran for president. And I do think that there is still, you go to America, there is still a lot of prejudice against Mormons. And there is still like, there's still like a lot of shit that Mormons get. You ask any evangelical, like most like Christians in America don't think Mormons are Christian. And many of them think that they're heretics. Like there's, I question the premise of the question. And yeah. All right, cops versus troops. Can cops or troops be comrades? Are both bastards? Oh, I already answered that question. Is my anarchist puppy still around in the chat? I answered your question. I hope that you heard it. Okay. Thoughts on Peterson launching a subscription-only social media site that allows for all speech unless the U.S. court takes them down? Oh, yeah. I made a joke about this because I said that I was going to start another site that was just going to be me. Yeah. So it's basically, it sounds like to me like 8chan, but with like a paywall. In my mind, because of the paywall, it's only going to attract Jordan Peterson fans. And then he's going to take that as an opportunity as saying, hey, look, free speech reigns supreme in this place where you have to pay money, which I think is a little ironic. In this place where you pay money to have free speech, everybody seems to agree with me, Jordan Peterson, the person who founded this site and advertised it. I wonder if on a long enough time scale, it will just turn into the shithole that 8chan turned into. But who knows? I think that when you sell a place on the internet based on the fact that they will not ban you no matter what, you're going to just wind up with people who were cast out from other social networks, and usually for a reason. And so that place is going to very quickly become a cesspool of like pedophiles and fascists and all of the people like exactly like 8chan. Okay. Do you how do you choose which guests to have on your subscriber appreciation day? Would someone be too small to be a guest? I've had, I think the smallest smallest YouTuber guest I've had on subscriber appreciation day only had like 100 subscribers. There's someone else too who had didn't have a YouTube channel, who was one of my guests. I would say subscriber appreciation day, I don't have any like formal way to do it, except that I don't have a formal way to do it, except I just find somebody interesting and then I reach out to them, and if they say yes, they come on the show. That's literally it. That's all it has. That's the only reason. That's the only way that I get like subscriber appreciation day folks. Is I just ask people I find interesting. I don't really have any rhyme or reason to it at all. There's a lot of talk about Trump impeachment leading to a boom in Trump's popularity. Thoughts? So there's two ways I could go. So the last time that Bill Clinton was impeached, it led to the Democrats doing better in the midterm elections because the American population saw it as the Republicans just using a sex scandal, blowing it up into something bigger than it was in order to get a few shitty political points, because that's exactly what it was. Trump has literally obstructed justice and done impeachable offenses virtually non-stop since he's become president. And I feel like it's pretty important to do that, if only to uphold the norms of saying that, you know, the president is not above the law. And by not doing it, you're basically saying the president is above the law. So right now, Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats who are against impeachment are hoping that they can bend, not bend on this point. So let the president get away with crimes in the hopes that they can get better, do better in 2020. Which, I think is weak. And I think it's getting increasingly weaker as the day moves on. And so I do think the Democrats might actually fold on that. Should the United States have supported the overthrow of dictators through the Arab Spring? Yeah. I think that the Arab Spring was good. The Syrian Civil War, maybe less so. But what happened in Tunisia was pretty good. I think before the military coup happened, I think what happened in Egypt was actually pretty progressive too. Oh no, that's not good audio. No, thieves, no going into the paper bag. Cat was trying to climb into a paper bag. In your Kamala Harris video, you said life in prison was better than execution. Would you rather die or spend the rest of your life in an American prison? I would just go with the I'll go with the Tyrion Lannister line, which is death is so final, while life always has possibilities. I definitely would take life in American prison rather than execution for sure, because prison, like I said, prison still has possibilities. Death does not. For me, I bet that I would become some sort of radical prison reform rights person who would write like columns or something and pass them to someone on the outside to try and publish them or something. I'd probably become something like that. Which, I mean, like, that's a life. That's a life of meaning. What do you think about Joe Biden telling him to start a physical revolution? I don't know what that is a reference to. Are you worried about the pushback the right wing will come up if Bernie becomes president? No, I think that Bernie speaks to a lot of the anger that a lot of the people who are in the radical right feel, and I think that actually Bernie would bring a lot of people from the radical right away from the radical right, because he would actually propose a left-wing solution to the problems that people are facing that are not scapegoating and are actually systemically fixing the problems of the world. Thoughts on Lopez Obrador? I've heard that name before. Is Lopez Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador? Oh yeah, AMLO, the freaking president of Mexico. I've heard that he's. I remember the election was last year, and I don't know much about what he's done, but if I remember from the election, he seemed like the best of the options that were running for president of Mexico. That's all I can say to that. I have no idea what his life has been like, or what his presidency has been like so far. Okay. What you said about unreliable ex-Mormons, given what Mormons are supposed to believe, why is listening to them any more reasonable than listening to conspiracy theorists? Okay, so given what Mormons are supposed to believe, so the stuff about aliens and Kobol and stuff like that, it's a declaration of their faith. And so, just like how Raelians believe that we are all clones from an alien named Rael, or Mormons who believe that when they die they get their own planet where they get to make it however they want, or people who believe that, you know, the human race was started with Adam and Eve and that there was a flood that wiped out most of humanity and then somehow didn't, and they fit all the animals. Like, I don't find the claims that Mormons make about their religion any more ridiculous than any other religion. Their mythology is just newer, and their mythology is just like more is just more spacey than like the religions that exist today. And I feel like that's not the angle that we should go down. And usually ex-Mormons are talking about the kind of shitty situation that they came out of. And I feel like that is that very often they have a skewed idea colored by personal experience of a group of people, and it's very easy to paint an entire religion. You wouldn't trust creationist historians either. Well, I would not. Like, trust me, I would not say that I believe what Mormon archaeologists say about the past. I would never, like, take seriously their claims about the creation of the world or anything like that. That stuff is, that, like, I would not do that for any religious claims. But there's a difference between what I accept as true and what I accept that other people are allowed to accept as true. If that makes sense. Like, to me, yeah, I don't believe in any of the things the Mormons say. I think that there's, like, a lot of their archaeological claims are dubious. But does it matter that? Does it matter if Mormons believe that? Like, if they believe that Israelites crossed the ocean and that there's, like, golden plates and all that kind of stuff, like, does that really hurt anybody? As long as they're not hurting anybody? Like, when they use it to justify racism, yeah, that's bad. When they use it to create this insular community that excludes people and hurts people, yeah, that's bad. But if they just believe it, like, who gives a shit? I'm very much pro if you want to believe that you're freaking Napoleon the First, you're the reincarnation Napoleon, go for it. Chase your bliss. Follow your bliss. Just don't hurt people. That's all I want to say. I guess as like an ex-Indigo child, I would say the same thing. Like, I don't really talk about my religious upbringing very much because it was very weird. Like, I was raised by my dad is basically like me. He doesn't really have a religious bone in his body, but I was raised but my mom is like a new agey type person, like spiritualist, reincarnation, psychics, gurus, tarot cards type stuff. That was the kind of like religious upbringing I had. And like, I definitely, when I first got out of that, was very against was very like anti-psychics and anti-astrology and like all that kind of stuff. But like, now that I'm like a grown-up and I'm like, oh, you know what, if it makes people happy, then let them do it. I don't give a shit. That's the way that I would say that. I'm very much yeah. So do ex-Mormons make good points? Yes. Do I need to internalize their anger and vitriol? And does that mean that because Mormon communities have some problems, that therefore the entire religion's a write-off? I feel like that's an unfair assumption to make. Are you a fan of Ken Burns documentaries? I recently watched his Vietnam doc. Some good stuff. I haven't watched the Vietnam doc. I have watched the Civil War one a couple times, and I think it's really, really good. It's definitely in need of an update. The fact that they have freaking Shelby Foote as the person that has been interviewed, the main interview, and like they base a lot of the Civil War documentary is based on Shelby Foote's work, and Shelby Foote is like the ultimate like lost cause myth historian of the American Civil War. I feel like, and they still play the Ken Burns Civil War documentary on PBS like every summer, and I think that, in my opinion, I think that we need a new one that is way less into the lost cause and talks way more about race and slavery and racism and America facing its legacy of slavery. So I just want a new one. The old one's still good. Just needs to be updated. I definitely want to see the Vietnam one. And there's a World War II one I think I want to watch at some point too. It's very American though. It's like, oh, World War II started in 1941. And it's like, oh geez. Okay, here we go. Okay. What about dilution, upping the number of people on the court to dilute the current members? Yeah, that's called packing the court, and I'm totally down for that. All right. We are over time, so I'm going to wrap up these last few questions, and then I'm going to go to bed because it is late and I am tired. Okay. Isn't professional and college sports just a modern version of the gladiator games to keep the masses entertained and stop them from revolting? I think it's a simplistic view of sports. You said in one of your videos that you had views you regretted. What were they? I definitely went through a edgy atheist phase, and I definitely held views that were bigoted and Islamophobic during that period. That were that I thought were extremely, that in retrospect I think were extremely gross. And I definitely held, while it was a little early for the movement, I definitely held views that were, that if they had festered longer, would have become like men's rightsy type beliefs that I'm very glad I got set straight on and I didn't let ruin me. What do you think about Final Fantasy VIII getting a remake? That'd be cool. Just like with the Final Fantasy VII remake, I doubt I'm going to see it because it'll only come out on the PlayStation 26 or whatever, and I won't have that. What's your ideal economic system if you're not a fan of capitalism? I already answered that. Why is class reductionism wrong? You socialists tend to argue that capital largely causes racism and sexism, so why wouldn't doing away with capitalism fix those things? Because culture is complex and has deep roots, and you can't just reduce sexism and racism to class. There's a lot of nuance, and it ruins things. Contrast Baby Bush to Trump on your policy of your choice. I feel like that would take some time. So, let me think about a quick one. Trump and Bush are actually fairly similar in a lot of things. That's the thing about, I think the thing I will say about that is that people don't realize how much that Trump actually has like almost the same politics as like a very normal Republican. He's just much more crass and much less good at PR and a lot less suave in his authoritarian tendencies. And I think that he's like a Republican without a PR team. I think that shows what people have. Okay, where are we? Okay. I can see Andrew Yang continuing to get more popular after debates and become one of the front runners. What do you think? I don't know. Andrew Yang, he's bad at interviews. At least he was. I'd have to see what zingers he gets in. Because the thing is that his goal in the first debate is going to be to lob some bombs at Joe Biden and get people to like him. He's got a very, very crowded field to come out in, and I think that his automation platform thing will be a tough sell. Okay, where are we? Yeah, when's the next countdown stream? Depending, if all things go well, pending nothing ruins anything and everything happens according to plan, July 15th. What is a planned economy anyways? It's an economy that doesn't use prices and markets to manage itself, but uses human organization and human planning to function instead. Does the Queen still have power there then? Yes, but it's mostly symbolic. She has a representative called the Governor General who lives in Canada and is chosen by, who's chosen mostly by the Prime Minister, and acts as the Queen's representative in Canada. And for the most part, their job is purely symbolic. What do you think will happen when the Queen kicks the bucket as far as the future of the monarchy and its publicity for the rest of the world? I honestly don't know. I actually am very curious to find out what happens if the Queen dies, because I know there is some calls to get rid of the monarchy, and I'd be very interested to see what I think a bunch of countries will dump the constitutional monarchy after she dies, but we'll see where that goes, because we haven't had she's been queen for so long, it'd be hard to think through. What do you think will happen when the... Oh, yeah, we did that one. What do you think a borderless world would look like? A lot nicer than now. What do you think of Cuba? Cuba has some problems, but Cuba has done freaking economic miracles with the situation that they're in, with the U.S. basically trying to choke them to death for decades, and them defiantly clinging on and thriving. Hasn't Mitt made his peace with Trump since 2016? Hasn't the leader of the church supported him since 2016? Not sure about the second question. The first question, Mitt tried to get into Trump's cabinet, but then Trump snubbed him, and he's been critical ever since. Do you prefer graphical improvements in video games or gameplay improvements, for example, better AI? I'm definitely a graphical improvements person. I'm the kind of person who, when I get to a game I like, I just kind of play it for like 10 years. So I would love if games just got better on the playstyle, because I don't really care about graphics. I don't really want to buy new machinery or anything like that. Okay. With all of that, I think I'm going to call it quits. It is 10:17, long past the time that I'm supposed to be going to bed. I know I started late, so I went a bit later, but yes, I still have a day job for the next week and a half, so still got to go to bed and get up in the morning and eat my bagel and drink my coffee and make jokes, and all those office-y things. So, until next week, this will be the show for this week. In 2 weeks will actually be my first day as a in 2 weeks on Tuesday will be my first day as a full-time YouTuber on July 2nd, and it's also the day I'm getting my tattoo, so I'll probably show you my big red ugly tattoo, and on top of that I will be streaming as a full-time YouTuber, which will be so crazy. I can't even imagine it. Anyways, friends, you've been awesome. Best of luck to Anarcho Fledgling. I hope you're still out there. Thinking about you, bud. And everyone else, you have an amazing evening. Take care.